That's right, and as you can see from the bans, Leeroy's Taunt Warrior has been banned, and from Ben's side, it looks like his Evenlock's been banned. So as you can see from there, it's probably the right move for Ben in considering his circumstances, because with Quest Warrior, with his decks, especially with odds, Rogue and matchups like that, it's going to be very, very tough considering what a Quest Warrior will get straight up on the board. So do you reckon that was the right decision for him to ban that Quest Warrior?
Oh, definitely, definitely. It's a deck that's kind of excels against these aggro lineups. You can kind of not only just control the board, but you can just often out-heal your opponent if you're playing an aggro deck. And Ben's brought a few, so that's a pretty standard sort of ban we see there.
Yeah, because with Quest Warrior, you know, you don't really get to see it much nowadays in some tournament play, but I think in considering his matchup, it was very good, but sadly for him, it won't be played. But another thing to point out is that Evenlock is slowly making a return as well. We saw a lot of zoos and a lot of cubes in that kind of area, but, you know, we've seen a bit more Evenlock this week compared to previous weeks, even though it's only the 2 matches.
I think Ben's quite a big fan of Evenlock. He's brought it a lot of times during this Premiership, and I've seen it and play it on ladder and etc. etc. It's definitely a pet deck, I'd say, for him, and it's obviously really strong. It's been strong since its inception, and it's still strong now. So definitely quite a good pick. The only caveat to that is that you don't get to play Zoo, which is another one of the strongest decks you can play right now.
Yeah, it's very difficult in that case. And that's one thing to mention as well, is the fact that, you know, we have seen a lot of token druid the last couple of weeks, so I think you wanted to play safe, also with your Q block when you've got the file, the Hellfire and all those kind of bits and pieces. It really does make up for a lot of things, but it seems like now we're just about to get the first game underway. Yeah,
so we have Ben playing his odd Rogue, and Leeroy with his Cube Warlock. This is probably a matchup Leeroy didn't want to face. Often if Ben gets a good start with a 1-drop into a 3-drop, it's really hard for the Control Warlock, the Cube Warlock, sorry, to kind of contest that well, especially if it's a Henchman plug. We're seeing its Fledgling, which can be answered by a Hellfire. It's a little bit better for Leeroy's side.
Yeah, that's one of the things to point out with the Fledgling as well, is the fact that, of course, you know, if they use stealth or anything like that to kind of assuming they can protect themselves, then they should be okay.
Oh, yeah.
But with Leeroy, you know, he's got 2 Hellfires, can't really complain about that at all. He's got his Dark Pact as well to keep him up to scratch in case he does get hit quite badly earlier on. But, you know, with that Lackey as well, it's going to be looking quite tough a bit, possibly, considering the circumstances we thought beforehand.
I mean, if the Fledgling gets to attack, you've done a poor job, is essentially what I'm saying. It's like, you put it on the minion, and if it ever attacks, you're like, oh, happy days, but it's usually not going to happen.
Yeah, he can, of course, coin out when he pleases, and wouldn't be surprised if he coins out now, in all fairness.
Yeah, I think this Fledgling needs to be Hellfired here. He can follow up with just a Towed Ram on whatever BigBen plays next. If he plays a Squire, it might be quite a nice follow-up to get a 3/3 Divine Shield. But this Fledgling does need to die before it gets out of control. It is a bit unfortunate for Leeroy's curve, because that Possessed Lackey is now a fair few turns away.
Yeah, it's going to be quite a while for that anyway, but of course with that Dark Pact, at least Leeroy can keep himself alive for a bit longer and can take risks rather than Hellfiring it afterwards. He can use it around turn 6, turn 7, depending on the circumstances. But Ben, you know, he's had some decent early drops so far, you know. But the only problem is the fact that it depends on whether he'll expect this second Hellfire. It's quite convenient that Leeroy managed to get both straight off the bat.
So for Leeroy, he could either use his second Hellfire here or just try and contest the board with the Umbra. And Umbra contests quite nicely here. Obviously, there's some beats in that scenario, namely Giggling Inventor to block it off and Fungal Mancer to buff the minions so you can't even get a trade. So it might be a case where he just uses the Hellfire here to kind of slow down Ben and make sure he doesn't have that Fungal Mancer, and he has to sort of repopulate the board again, which might be a bit harder.
Yeah, it doesn't seem too bad so far. I think the Hellfire is a good option, even if he does play that Giggling Inventor and leaves him to use that Hellfire for later. It won't make too much of a difference because, of course, 2 of those minions have already got Divine Shield already. So yeah, it won't be as cost-effective, but as long as Leeroy gets that turn 7, turn 8 kind of area, it should be in a lot more of a stable position, but we'll have to see how Ben can go from there.
I mean, one of the reasons Leeroy is a bit hesitant to use the Hellfire is that he doesn't have a Defile in hand, and he doesn't have any Spellstones in hand. So actually getting the life back and getting the board clears in the future is quite a sort of daunting task. He's playing the Umbra here, and it's kind of like a super taunt in that BigBen really wants to have to kill it, It's not going to be too hard with a 2-1 and a dagger available. But you basically do not want to leave that Umbra alive when there's a potential for Lackey coming up.
Yeah, he's got 2 as well, so he can't really complain even if he does have 1 taken out anyway. But yeah, you're right. He's in a very, very good spot at the moment. I can understand where Leeroy's coming from. You can see his reaction earlier. He was kind of a bit hesitant to play it, but he knew full well that if he doesn't, then he won't have too much use for it afterwards. But one of the main things to talk about is the fact that it will save himself some health, some HP, and all those bits and pieces. You know, he could be a little bit worried that Ben could have cold blood as well, which he hasn't, luckily enough.
Yeah, and Ben here was actually 2 damage off lethal with the Deckhand and the Void Ripper, but wisely choosing to play a bit more for board and killing off the Umbra and probably having the lethal on the turn after. Ben's just thinking if he wants to commit more to this board, thinking maybe Defile is potentially going to happen and he wants to have stuff to be able to repopulate the board afterwards. But Leeroy, he really kind of has to survive here. Tal'Daram on one of these taunts gives him a 3/3 Divine Shield taunt, which is pretty powerful, to be honest.
Yeah, that could be the perfect answer for him to at least try and stay alive in this game, because he's, like you mentioned before, he hasn't got any spell stones, anything like that, so he can't heal himself in any way. He does have that Dark Pat, but he will be using that for that Lackey next turn anyway. It was just a question whether he wanted to play a little bit greedy or if he was okay in a decent spot.
That is lethal for Ben if he orders this correctly. He can use one of the 2 attack things to pop the shield and use the 3/3, and then that should be 8 damage to the face.
That's all said and done, just like that. It was a shame. It just shows that even with those 2 Hellfires, he needed the Defiles as well on top of that to try and help him out.
If you don't have the follow-up to the board clear, the Rogue has plenty of minions to repopulate the board with, and you're just going to still be taking that damage.
Yeah, you could see that Leeroy just kind of expected that in those kind of circumstances. Yeah, sure, you know, you've got Hellfire twice to at least try and clear the board a little bit, but you know, Ben had a good mulligan to start with. He had plenty of 1-mana drops to kind of fit in there to at least try and put the pressure on. But of course, you do 6 damage to yourself with those 2 Hellfires on top of that. And, you know, it's like I mentioned before, if he at least got to that turn 7 onwards where he used a Dark Pat on the Lackey and then got something on the board, then, you know, it might have been a little bit more stable. But even then, he didn't really have any other health options, and he couldn't even tap to maybe try and find what he needed.
Yeah, it's not enough just to clear the board. You need that swing turn, which usually involves getting out of Void Lord and then doing your Q-blocks shenanigans afterwards. Doing
your thing, that kind of stuff. Yeah, because he had all the pieces, but you know, he just couldn't really finish the job. It's like, normally if you don't get it cleared by turn 5, turn 6 for Odd Rogue, that's when you kind of struggle from there. But, you know, the main thing is Leeroy doesn't have to deal with it anymore. He doesn't have to deal with the Odd Rogue, which is nice, because we know how much he's played. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's not the best upside.
Yeah, it's the only positive I could take from that for him, really. And you can see he kind of expected it anyway. It's like you mentioned at the start. It was like, right from the get-go, he saw it and he was just like, okay, well, I'll see what I can do. If not, then, you know, it happens.
Yeah, definitely.
It's one of those kinds of things. But what do you feel like Leeroy will now play going into this? Of course, he's still got plenty of ways to go into this. Of course, as you know, Ben still has his Secret Hunter, does have his Token Druid, so still has quite aggressive decks. Do you feel like maybe he'll go back to something else? I
mean, you have some players who like to just re-queue the same deck straight away, kind of as a confidence booster. I lost with this deck. I want to, you know, regain my confidence for the future games. But I think Nick's more of a mind gamer. He likes to really kind of get into people's heads and try and think what they're going to queue. So he's gone with the same one. That might be a mind game thing or it might be a confidence thing. You never really know of Nick.
He's the sort of guy who just wants to give you a migraine, basically, at the end of the game. Like, you know, I already don't like him now. Nah, I love Ben anyway, but of course, it's been an uphill struggle for him, and he has game for game, week by week, trying to make it so he can qualify after not the greatest starts, but he's been doing well from here on in. But now he's going to play his Secret Hunter to see if he can push things forward. But Leeroy does have his weapon, but not the best of cards to start with.
I mean, his hand's pretty good. He's got a Mountain Giant for turn 4 available, followed up with the Skull of the Minari. That is usually what people will refer to as the nuts when they get salty on ladder.
Just throwing it out there,
yeah? Yeah. I'm not saying I'm one of those people. I definitely am.
Oh, no, of course, you're right. It's just, the only thing the weapon is, of course, you know, if he gets a Void or even a Doomguard in this situation wouldn't be too bad. Ben will obviously be looking for those 4-2s. Oh, speak of the devil, there you go, that's his first one. And we'll have to see when Leeroy will use that Hellfire. But speaking of the drops, he does have that Void Lord to complement it.
So Leroy's decided he's not going to go for the Giant anymore. He's thinking, I'm going to take far too much damage. I already have Skull into pulling a Void Lord. That's going to be enough for board. Going for the Giant and tapping here is just kind of suicidal. I'm probably going to be using the Hellfire next turn to deal with most of this board and then just go for the Skull. So it's wise not to use the tap there because he recognizes his health total is getting pretty low. With the Hunter hero power and kill commands in the deck, it is possible for the Hunter to just kill you after you've used the Void Lord anyway. Yeah,
and then on top of that, he does have his weapon, and of course, he won't be playing it this turn, but could be very close. And look at that, yeah, he's just already working out as we speak, and it could be a quick game, but we'll have to see how things go from there, because of course, with that Void Lord, he won't be able to get that till turn 6, even if he does play it, but even then, it will be open to lethal.
So Ben's kind of figuring out here, do I want protection against Defile with the plus health, or do I want to go for more damage with Wind Fury? And he's saying, I want more damage. This is going to prevent Leeroy from being able to even play the Skull next turn. So he needs to find something like a Defile here, otherwise he's just going to simply die.
Yeah, of course, with the Beast on the board, he can just, of course, kill commands. Weapon and clean things up, but he's okay.
How did I forget about that?
Yeah, don't need to worry about that anymore now after after that shenanigans. And yeah, that Wind Fury won't be too much of use at this stage. It's only what he's through, but we'll have to see how things pan out from here. But you know, his Hellfire doesn't have any more, but of course his Dark Pact won't be too much use until that turn 7 when he does play that Lackey later on.
Yeah, so Ben here is deciding, do I want to play more for board with the Spellstone, or looking with the Flanking Strike, or do I want to just keep pressing the button? Because he is really close. If he gets a hero power in here this turn, Beast survives next turn, and Leeroy uses no healing, then he's just got lethal. The problem with going just kill command hero power this turn, even though it fits the mana, is that it just doesn't do anything for the board at all. So it allows Leeroy to just use like maybe a Spellstone, maybe just a Dark Pact here, and then BigBen's kind of off the board for the rest of the game.
Yeah, because I think Ben hasn't got enough information to kind of figure out if he does have that Spellstone or not to heal. Because, you know, Leeroy maybe could have used it then instead and then did a Giggling Venter next turn, but he knows that that would have been a little bit of a risk considering the circumstances. But it seems like he's going to do that anyway. If he doesn't get anything this turn, he can just literally just hero power to finish the job.
Yeah, so he's doing this because he thinks he's not going to be able to have a Beast to turn afterwards, so he needs to use the kill command right away. And it's put Leeroy in a spot where he knows what he has to avoid, which is just the hero power. He needs to heal this turn somehow. It could be a case of cubing one of these taunts. You can use the Divine Shield to kill off maybe the Wind Fury, send the other one to face, then go cube Pact on it, and then you've got 2 more 1/2 Divine Shield taunts, as well as the potential for more later down the line when this cube pops, or you use Talgram, etc, etc.
Well, I'm not going to call if he gets a kill command at the top card next time. So
currently, it doesn't matter that much that there's a Beast, but all you miss out is 1 damage for face.
Yeah, that's the main thing. And of course, at least now, Leeroy does have a few more taunts on the board, but he's run out of options in terms of healing himself in any way, but he's got enough on board to keep him going. And if he does take a risk putting a weapon on the board and getting that Void Lord out, then that's just another story, really.
I mean, the main thing for Ben right now is to keep clicking that hero power. So there is an extra bit of healing now for Leeroy. He doesn't need it initially. The only burst damage available for Ben is going to be that second kill command. The Eaglehorn bow is not going to be able to get through these taunts. So for Leeroy, he does have 3 healing as of now, which lets him survive for 1 more turn, essentially, or 2 more turns rather. So instead of using it now, he's going to try and put the pressure back on BigBen because he knows he's only got 2 or 3 more turns of his own health total with the Spellstone for the future. So it means he needs to sort of counteract and go for his own lethal push of his own.
I think I just saw a glimpse of kill command, and I did. Because he had Freezing Trap and something else in that first time round. Managed to get another tracking out of that, and of course, it got to the point where, you know, got another kill command, and Bob's your uncle, job done, nice one.
Definitely was better looking, because he was definitely losing the board from that point. So it was a case of where he probably is going to be relying either on the top deck kill command to find it some other way, or just using the hero power over several turns. And I'm not sure he had the time to do that with the counter push that Leeroy was preparing.
Yeah, it would have been a fight for face at that point. I think he knew that he was in a really bad spot. He would have got a Voidlord out by then, but, you know, they don't do enough damage anyway, so it would have taken a good few turns to at least get himself somewhere and get things going. He wouldn't have had much of an answer either. You know, of course, Hunters don't have any AoE apart from the hero power, and even then that wouldn't have been enough, so it would have really, really struggled from there, and he got that second kill command. So, yeah, I'm sure he's not complaining at this stage anyway.
No, definitely not.
And the last deck for Ben is that Druid, so it's going to be that Token Druid. And, you know, with this kind of lineup as well, we've seen many different types of Token Druid in the past, and it's still a very, very strong deck, both in Nala and in tournament situation. We've kind of seen it everywhere, but do you reckon this Token Druid could clean things up for Ben at this stage? Even if it's not just the next lineup, but any of the 3 lineups? I
mean, historically, if we're talking about the Warlock again, it's done pretty well against sort of token-style Druid decks. You have things like Defile, which answer Whispering Woods incredibly well. But this new sort of style of Token Druid has a bit more sort of longevity to it. You can make bigger boards with things like Saronite Chain Gang, plus buffing them with a Strong Shell Scavenger, sorry. So I'm not sure exactly if that matchup's going to be quite as favoured, but it's definitely something that Leeroy is looking to find the win with the Q Warlock there, as it has been struggling so far. Yeah, because you notice that some decks have the Chain Gang, some of them don't. Some even have the Sensor's Deny Mana card, and some of them don't as well. But this is it is quite an aggressive Token Druid, but obviously with the Chain Gangs, it will kind of like delay the tempo a little bit for him, so I'm not too sure if it's going to be too well, but it's like you said, he's got the AoEs to play, and you know what it's like with Token Druid, you've got to be really careful with the decisions you make, but I think with Ben at this stage, he'll know that he just needs to play everything and anything from the get-go, or else if he's against something like Cube, then you're pretty much done for from the set onwards, because of course if they Cube the Voidlord all the time and all this kind of shenanigans here and there and delay things further, you know, it just gets to a point where it's just a matter of time before Ben can either do something about this or just concede. I mean, with Token Druid, you have to get through Void Lords the hard way. There's no way about it. You don't run the silence, you don't run transform effects. You're going to have to maybe use a Savage Ron, and that's probably pretty bad. On the other hand, if you get Doom Guards out, then that's one big minion that's going to be hitting your face. Same thing with Mountain Giant, and Spreading Plague lines up poorly against those sort of things, which is one of the strengths of the Token Druid deck.
Well, you never know. If he gets a Wild Growth and Coin into Nourish, then maybe he'll be in a better spot. Oh, maybe it could be okay. But yeah, I think he will need like at least a Wild Growth or a Nourish or something, just to at least give him a kick at the backside to kind of like help him out a little bit in this kind of scenario. Because it's not even just a card draw; it's the fact that he needs as much of a mana advantage as possible in this kind of matchup. Because if not, then he will struggle from the start. We've seen it happen before. I've come against so many cube locks or control locks in my time with that Token Druid, and yeah, that is kind of the case really. When it gets to a certain point where they cube the Voidlords in many ways, and you've got to kind of sacrifice your Savage Roar and Soul of the Forest sometimes doesn't work out, because again, you know, if you put it all on Whisper the Woods and you take out one of those minions, you can defile the whole lot in one go. All these kind of bits and pieces, it can be a little bit of a pain. But as you can see, you were right though. Leeroy will be sticking with his Warlock deck straight away.
It's a case where he has to win with this deck at some point, so he may as well try and do it now.
Now or never, pretty much.
Right. He has got the Mountain Giant in his opening hand, which can be quite a hard thing for token-style druids to deal with. If that thing's pushing 8 to your face every turn, suddenly you don't actually have to worry about using AoE to clear. You can just kill the Token Druid.
And one thing to point out straight away, of course, he does have his Giant, so he can get that 2 turn 3 if he wants to, but instead he will be getting that Librarian out straight away. And, you know, he has the Doomsayer, he has the Defile now, so in terms of his starts, not looking too bad, but at least Ben's got a Nourish of his own to decide whether at the time he wants to draw or add that 2 mana, but I assume he'll be adding the 2 mana later on.
Yeah, probably. So for Leeroy, he's got quite a nice curve here. He can tap on 2. Using the Doomsayer now doesn't make a lot of sense because Ben doesn't really want to pay him on turn 3. If you use your Doomsayer on your turn 3, it can kind of block Ben's turn 4 plays, which are usually going to be like Saronite Chain Gang or Whispering Woods. And then you can follow that up with a 4-mana Mountain Giant as your turn 4 for quite a nice sort of curve. And then you can even copy that Giant, if it lives, with one of these cubes and pop it straight away. Yeah,
I was going to discuss about Ben's next couple of turns, but looking at Leeroy at the moment, I was, yeah, it's like completely blacked out entirely by this going on the cab. He's maybe trying to be anonymous or something, I'm not sure, but you know, you can't change your tag now, it's a bit late.
I think Leroy wasn't doing too well, so he's replaced himself with Dark Leroy, his alter ego.
Dark, shiny Leroy without the shiny bit, but that's a I'm just trying to figure out else apart from that, but yeah, as you can see now, in this situation, oh, he's back. He's not Dark anymore. He's just standard Leroy now.
As soon as Skull Minari popped up, a sort of light turned on in his life, I think.
Oh, dear me. Imagine what if he can hear us now. He'll probably look it back anyway, depending if he wins or loses. But in this scenario, obviously Leroy can trade one of the minions in the file straight afterwards, but some people might say it's a little bit of a waste, but it depends on what Ben has. With the Whisper the Woods, it's not really too useful at this stage. Then he's going to get 5/1/1s that next turn, and he hasn't got anything to complement it, like the with the soul or anything like that. So you may have to wait for a little bit until then.
Right, so Leroy doesn't have any demons in hand, so Skull's not actually that appetizing right now. It's probably something he's want to do down the line. Something he could do is just simply attack and cube this Mountain Giant, looking to use the Defile on the follow-up.
Yeah, this is kind of situation where you wish you had some for your protector.
I mean, the thing with Ben's deck, although it is a token deck, usually it's not very aggressive until the later stage of the game. So Leroy can kind of spend this time just setting up his own sort of game plan with these cubes, with this Giant, etc. He's gone for the Lackey instead of the cube straight away, which makes sense. He could potentially cube a Void Lord if that comes out of the Lackey, and it makes his Defile probably a bit easier by having a 2 health guy on board anyway.
Yeah, Ben hasn't really got too many options. Of course, he's got 2 Giggling Inventors, but he's got nothing to, again, complement. He hasn't got Power of the Wild, he hasn't got any of the Soul of the Forest or anything like that. It's a pretty tough one for him. So I think he's just trying to figure out a way to maybe try and figure things out, whether he should put another one down just for the sake of it, or to at least get some border control to make it wider, or just to continue on from there. But yeah, you're right, that with Leroy, with 2 Defiles and a couple of Dark Packs as well, can't complain. Got 2 cubes, he's got his weapon. His weapon won't be, of course, won't be too much of use as of yet, but
I think Ben
will be later on.
I think Ben's just trying to set up this ultimate infestation for next turn because he realizes his hand's not that great, and he's going to be wanting to use that. He's trying to empty some cards from hand. He's trying to clean up all the threats from Leroy. He's saying, I don't want to deal with multiple Mountain Giants, so I'm going to get rid of that straight away.
Yeah, it's not something you want, really, is it?
Interesting he's gone for this rather than the other Giggling Inventor. I mean, against a Defile, it's a little bit better because there's no... If you attack the 2/1 into the Divine Shield, there's no 1 health minion anymore. He doesn't currently have a 2 health minion, so it's a bit harder to get a Defile off here than if you just went for a 2/1.
So this is where the problems are going to slowly surface, but he can take that anyway, like you mentioned before, with his Infestation and a couple of minions from there. So it's not all doom and gloom to start with anyway, and I don't think he'll have much opportunity to use that Plague until later on, but, you know, Leroy's not stupid. He'll definitely make sure to keep that board count low as possible in case something like that does happen.
So for Leroy, it might be smarter to not pact if you go for a cube here. Simply the fact that you're probably wanting to Defile on the turn afterwards, and you don't want these minions to be attacking into your 3/9 Void Lord so much. And these 1/3 taunts kind of present enough of a roadblock that will soften up the board. You don't really need to use the pack straight away. If you end up having to Defile afterwards, all you're kind of doing is damaging your Void Lords, which would have been full health had you just not used the pact.
He's got a bit of a decision now as well. We spoke about the Infestation to get some card draw, but he's got quite a good opportunity to use that Plague. He can trade with one of the Void Lords, maybe get it down as much as possible, and then use a Plague or use Infestation anyway just to get further card draw for if he does use Plague later on. But he could do something better with it.
So Ben, obviously using the Ultimate Infestation, he has to get through these Void Lords sometime. You may as well do it now. This is one of the problems of Leroy presenting the Void Lord straight away, is that BigBen gets to use the Ultimate Infestation on it, where otherwise he'd have no great targets other than the cube, which is, you know, if he's using the ultimate infestation on the cube, it's kind of like he's dark packed for you.
It's going to be a tough one. This is actually the first series I've seen of Ben where I can't see his trophy in the background as well. So that's when you know he's going all for it pretty much.
Oh, definitely.
It's all dark and gloomy around here, this game, isn't it? You know, you've got Leeroy's now Dark Leeroy, and now you've got, you know, Dark Ben slowly merging in as well, isn't it, pretty much? But now in this kind of circumstance, if we have a look now, it does have that part of the world. It's also quite tempting to trade, maybe go into that, then Plague and then part of the world afterwards. Still hasn't got a forest yet, which is quite, you know, quite surprising in that kind of sense anyway. And he's got no issues, ain't going to be too much of a bother now. And then he does have another infestation related, but to be fair, even in that time, I don't think it will be too much of use.
Yeah, so Leeroy kind of playing clean-up here. He's not really got great offensive tools. He's also doesn't really want this wide of a board because of things like Spreading Plague being really kind of scary. If Ben does Spreading Plague here and Leeroy has to be forced to use a Defile, it's kind of just going to hurt his entire board anyway. So it's kind of like a case where going for this Void Lord copying strategies kind of worked out poorly for him, and you can see he's actually trading off some of them just because of the threat of Spreading Plague.
Yeah, and as you can see now, even if he does trade with that Void Lord at some stage, he can get at least 6-1-5s down, even buff him straight afterwards on top of that. So he could be in quite a good spot, but again, with that Defile, it's not really going to be too much of use.
Yeah, Ben's probably looking here, can I pop this Void Lord and then use a Plague afterwards? Now, do I do that best? Is there any way for me to buff up my Spreading Plague straight away? It's a bit hard to fit all that in with the mana. It might be a case where he has to just either not go for the maximum value here and just do what he's doing now and not popping the Void Lord, or go for a weaker sort of Spreading Plague overall.
Yeah, it seems like he's taken into consideration what you said as well, and at least he'll be able to get that timing down on top of that. But does continue to upgrade anyway. Still hasn't got a Soul of the Forest yet, which is a little bit of a pain, but it's not really something Leeroy can deal with anyway.
So
that couldn't have come at a better time, actually. That's if he wants to continue playing defensive, but at this moment in time, it's still going to be extremely difficult for him to decide. Like, you know, it's like you mentioned before, he definitely can cube again to at least, you know, not kind of cushion a blow, but just make make Ben's life, you know, a little bit more of a pain in the backside, you could say.
I mean, if he really wanted to, he could cube and then copy the cube and just say, you haven't got enough to kill me here, which could be the case. Or he can go for the route where I want to actually just clear this board. The problem with just going for clear is that now you've got a cube stuck in hand. Now you've got, you know, Powered Ram stuck in hand. There's nothing great you really want to be copying. So it could be a case where if I'm going to copy something, it has to be right now.
Yeah, it's going to be a hard decision for him. He knows what he needs to do, and it's...
So he's kind of gone for... I think he was thinking about going for the Defile and then realised he doesn't actually have to. So this is an interesting play. I think Leeroy probably would have done better there if he went for some sort of cube or Tal'Daram play instead of going for this. Because it's going to leave him... If this board gets dealt with, it's going to leave him with a hand that is kind of isolated, and all he's got really is a Possessed Lackey.
Yeah, Ben needs to try and think of some ideas ASAP. Of course, with the Whisper the Woods, it's not going to make too much difference. Even after he loses the playing minions, just due to the fact, well, of course, like you mentioned before, the Defiles, and now it's got Hellfire on top of that. So Leeroy does have plenty of answers. It's just a matter of how quickly Ben can try and get through this board.
It's important to note that there's only one Strong Shell Scavenger in BigBen's deck. So obviously there was quite a risk in leaving these 4 Taunt minions alive, in that they get buffed up by that and maybe they get out of range of some of these AoEs. But luckily for Leeroy, he has dodged that one out. And it's likely that this board is going to be AoEable once all these trades happen.
Yeah, it looks like at this stage, and even now we can Hellfire into Defile. Clean this up nicely, and you know, he's still got plenty of AoEs to help deal with any problem anyway, and they've got Gaining Events on top of that now, so yeah, he definitely can't complain at this stage.
I mean, yeah, he can clear it, but then he's putting himself on a low health total. He's not really got any proactive plays afterwards. He does have Godfrey, he does have another Defile if he goes for Hellfire Defile this turn. So ways to sort of survive, but it could be a case of I haven't got Gul'dan in hand, I haven't got any proactive threats. If I keep just clearing, maybe Ben just gets there eventually if he keeps refilling.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what he's hoping for at the moment, and as you mentioned before, well, as I said as well, it's going to Hellfire Defile just to clean all this up just to be absolutely safe as possible. You're not really too sure what he could have. You can't get from there anyway at that stage. I mean, that Savage Roar came a little bit late. But it wouldn't have made too much difference anyway.
Bit, yeah. But the thing is, like, Ben has Refill here. He has a UI in hand. He has Giggling Venter. He has Whispering Woods. He's just seen Hellfire and Defile. Leeroy's only at 10 health. Ben might be worried about Blood Reaver Gul'dan. He's like, that's Leeroy's way sort of to solidify this game. Can I beat Gul'dan, or do I need to be killing Leeroy before he can get to it? And I think the case is you cannot beat Gul'dan. So he needs to sort of put the pressure on now. And he's trying to figure out what's the best way to do that.
Yeah, it's going to be extremely difficult. Normally when they get Gul'dan in that kind of scenario, it's kind of, I wouldn't say GG straight away, but it's very, very difficult to kind of come back from and deal with.
Ben's going very aggressive here. He's going for a UI whilst having to discard some cards here, which is something a lot of newer players don't want to be doing. But Ben realizes that the tempo from the UI is important. The few cards that I get are really important. I need some select cards. It doesn't matter if I discard a few, as long as I'm getting closer to those cards that I need.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main things as well. It's the fact that even at this stage, he's only on 9 HP, but one good thing is that at least he can trade off. Of course, if he didn't trade it off at all, he could have just Savage Roar and cleaned things up and won that. But good thing that Void Lord's already been passed, he's already played one, he's already got one in his hand. He knew that Doomguard was going to come straight away afterwards.
Oh, Leeroy's very happy to see that go, because that's one of the most consistent damage sources that Ben has in his deck. We've already seen some swipes being played, we've seen UIs being played. So in terms of burst damage, there isn't a whole lot from this Token Druid. He has to play for board, which plays into Leeroy's game plan perfectly. Malfurion, on the other hand, it makes quite a scary sort of board with those 2/1/5s. They're hard to clear. And you get that hero power each turn. So Leeroy's going to be very happy to see that card being discarded. Yeah,
we definitely would have whittled him down into some respect, and it would have been very hard to deal with, like you mentioned before. Without Gul'dan, he's going to really struggle in this kind of matchup. But yeah, you're right though. Leeroy is at a very good spot at the moment. He's one really can't complain, but I think Ben knows now he needs to try and get bored ASAP as soon as possible, try and get things cleared. But with another Void Lord now, it's going to be quite tough for him.
Yeah, so there is obviously a quite clear Defile. Yeah, you could just click the button Defile and it would clear this board if he wants to take that route. Leeroy's just got to make sure he knows what he wants to do this turn. I mean, you could go Defile and then Faceless and Tal'Daram your Void Lord if you really want to. And that's quite a big board, I'd say.
Yeah, I think a Defile's worth the cost in this kind of retrospect in some ways.
Leeroy's going for the cube route. He doesn't want to lose this Doomguard because there's quite a lot of pressure. He might be thinking, I'll do this and then copy. Is he going to copy first so he gets the Doomguard attack straight away? This is really quite a smart play from Leeroy. Kind of putting the pressure back onto Ben. And he has 2 more Doomguards within that cube.
Just loving life at the moment, pretty much. He's finally could potentially get a win from this now, and Ben, I think he knows as well as we do that he's running out of options. It didn't have too bad of a start, but Leeroy has found an answer. I thought even with the Plagues and having him buffed even just a bit, he might be able to do something, but those Void Lords at the start really caused a lot of issues and caused an opening for Leeroy.
I mean, it just kind of comes back to the fact that the Token Druid has to get through the Void Lords the hard way. There's no other way about it.
Yeah, we spoke about it at the start, didn't we? We were just like, if he doesn't go through it, then the man's going to have some issues.
Yeah.
But even now, think he pretty much knows it anyway, but he's going to armor up anyway. I assume he will. Yeah, because obviously in that kind of retrospect, he will be pretty much done for anyway. But at least he'll stay alive for a moment. But it does have 2 Savage Roars as well.
So not quite lethal yet for Leeroy. He could have done some play where he facelesses the cube and then pops them, etc. to get a board full of Doom Guards. Not quite there. So he's going to have to play at least another turn of this game. And he's just deciding what's the best way to do it. He obviously wants to push some face damage and make sure he doesn't die. He only has 4 taunts available if we assume this Void Lord gets killed in 1 hit. So he's probably going to play a little bit of cleanup there. Might actually faceless this Void Lord instead, but he's going very, very defensive, killing absolutely everything. Not sure you have to do that. I mean, it's pretty hard for 1 Wisp to get through 4 taunts. I think it might make a bit more sense to try and set up your lethal of your own so you don't have to do this again on the following turn if Ben just goes for another Wisp's play.
Yeah, I think Leeroy at this stage, you know, he's 2-0 down. I think just trying to be extra careful. Yeah, there is some stage where you could be cautious. Maybe there's a bit, you know, some players normally play very greedy or quite greedy in some respect to at least gain as much advantage as possible. But
I mean, by playing safe, he's kind of played not safe already here because Ben has just
pressure.
Put out another board that he has to deal with. If he went for a lethal setup on the previous turn, then you wouldn't have to worry about this board whatsoever. Oh,
not a bad pickup. Not a bad pickup at all, I must say. And I think Leeroy would be pretty happy about that in that kind of respect. To be fair, he's got plenty of options anyway. Gul'dan, well, being one of them, he's going to be loving that anyway. Ben's still trying to think if there's a way out of it, but at this point, I think he knows that as soon as he sees that Gul'dan, his face is going to drop a little bit.
Well, Leeroy might not even want to play it here. I mean, his board's already fairly full. Probably will make him survive. This guy's just going to clear the board yet again. And this is a route to victory with that Gul'dan in hand. It's a pretty clear one now.
Yeah, I don't blame him really. It's like, you know, at this stage, Ben is running out of options now. Both his Whisper of the Woods are gone. He does have 1. I think he does have 1 Plague left. He's only played 1 if I remember, remember rightly.
Yes, Spreading Plague left. So this is the worry when you do this, because if Ben had just Spreading Plague Soul of the Forest here, it's really hard for you to clear that board because you need 2 sets of attacks on every single minion or an AoE. So
he does get that Plague.
So I don't think Ben wants to play it here because he can survive this round of attacks and then he can follow up with the Plague plus Soul, and it's going to be really hard for Leeroy to clear that. He does have Blood Reaver Gul'dan, however, so if he were to sort of attack into that Plague, do as much as he can, kill off 2 of these Doom Guards, which is going to allow him to have the space available to resummon some things.
Out of cards.
He should be okay.
Going to hope so, but yeah, you're right there. He will clean up 2 of those Doom Guards doing this.
I mean, to be fair, just Godfrey.
Yeah, to be fair, actually, we haven't actually mentioned Godfrey that much.
You get this Gul'dan nonsense. He could just use Godfrey, which clears pretty much every board, and I'm pretty sure it clears this one.
Yeah, just wanted to use it really. It's been a few turns out. It's just been sitting there, wavering pretty much.
I think Godfrey's the safe player. I mean, you've seen pretty much all of the burst damage from Ben that you can do from hand, so you should be completely fine to just go Godfrey Doomsayer this turn.
Just a matter of when he wants to play. Like I said, you know, I don't blame him for playing it very safe in this scenario.
But I'm pretty sure that Godfrey just clears this already. You got the 1/2, you got the 3/4, and you got the 5, and then the treants provide the ones afterwards as well.
So that could be the answer for where Ben will have... You could say no more options now. You know, that's both his Plague's gone, his Whisper of the Woods are gone. And it's pretty much done for, really. It's like, even if he draws in more cards, I don't know if he's even got many left to even think about it. He's already used 2 infestations and on top of that, and now it's just not going to make any more difference unless he wants to have a laugh and go into fatigue. Go into fatigue. But
yeah,
you can see there. But it's pretty much done for. There's not really anything Ben can do now, and it's a matter of time, really.
Yeah, he does have 5 burst damage in hand, which is quite a way off 11. And he's going to probably hit that concede button as soon as Leeroy plays his 10 mana card in hand.
Yeah, that's when it will tap and say, okay, you know, maybe that 3-0 was just a dream. We'll leave it at 2-1 for now. We'll see what happens.
I'm pretty sure Ben knew this game was over a while ago, but you may as well play it out.
Yeah, because you never know. You know, I've seen some weird things in the past, and it wouldn't actually surprise me he managed to get away with it in any way. It was quite close in some retrospects, but you could see that Leeroy was just playing super defensive, super cautious, make sure everything was just down to a T. He knew that he was running out of a win condition and option to actually at least try and make something of this. But yeah, Leeroy so does make that comeback in the end. So, you know, it wasn't going to be that dream 3-0 which Ben wanted, sadly, but, you know, it's 2-1, so Leeroy could be on his way to a comeback here.
I mean, it's an expected result for that cube warlock to be favoured against the token druid. Historically, it's been really good. With Giggling Inventor, it probably makes the match even better for the cube because they have other defensive tools available. So it was quite a long shot for Ben to get his 3rd win in that particular matchup. But he does have 2 more.
I don't remember last time I even beat cube block with token druid. In all fairness, it's been that long. That kind of says it all, really.
I remember the last time I beat it. Got to turn 4, I just played Whispering Woods. They didn't have a clear.
Well, no, what, nothing? Really?
Nothing at all. You just play it out.
No Defile, no Hellfire, nothing. No.
That's all you got to do.
Just lucky, maybe.
Yeah.
You're right, that is literally one of the only things you can do. And even when you do have Whisper of the Woods, sometimes you only get 5 of them up. But, you know, sometimes 5 is better than none. You can actually win with it, depending if you have the Savage Draw, the Power of the Wild, all those bits and pieces to the puzzle to try and add on to it. But, you know, Leeroy had a pretty good start to begin with anyway, considering his circumstances. So he was in a good spot from there anyway. But, you know, like you mentioned before, I don't blame him for playing it super safe anyway, so...
Now, here we have Togwaggle Druid against Token Druid. Now, if you are knowledgeable about Token Druid mirrors, you'll know that some of them go to fatigue quite often. Well, when you're playing Togwaggle Druid, fatigue's your kind of game plan. So it could be a case where Leeroy is pretty happy to be playing this matchup because the threat of spreading plague from either side is so high. BigBen can't really play Whispering Woods just out there because Leeroy will just go spreading plague and usually be enough to sort of hold him off. And then once it gets to that fatigue stage, Leeroy's just got, you know, the winning conditions of Togwaggle and all of that nonsense. Yeah,
it's a shame. One thing I was going to point out, Stefan, that Ben could have had a very good start if Leeroy didn't have that wild growth into Coin Nourish, just due to the fact that he would have had Whisper of the Gods, would have had Savage Roar as well, and would have really nailed him down quite easily from the get-go. But as you can see now, he's already used the wild growth. He's going to call into Nourish. We'll put the Tyrant down straight away as well to have some kind of board presence.
Yeah,
no complaints, really.
Leeroy's hand's very good here. He's going for a card draw option here because he knows he's going to win in sort of fatigue. He wants all the options available. He already has Spreading Plague. In terms of mana, should be all right. Doesn't have an immediate answer for this, but there's only 5 mana available from Ben, so even if like a Savage War was to come down, it's not going to be able to kill Leeroy anyway. Yeah, even if Leeroy doesn't trade with anything, shape or form. Oh, he does actually have the Star Fall, which could answer this if he chooses. But that is a potentially really good answer for a Soul of the Forest, so I don't think he wants to use it here. Instead, he's going to clear up some of these, draw some more cards, get towards maybe UI, that sort of thing, maybe swipes, etc. And he should be in pretty good shape. I think I really like Leeroy not using the AoE here.
Yeah, because even if he used that Savage Roar, that would have been probably 24 damage on board total. That's literally if he didn't touch any of it, which wasn't going to happen, of course. And he's not going to take that risk. He's not a silly boy. But even now, it's going to be very tough. That start from Leeroy is really helped him in so many ways. And, you know, he's got 2 plagues. He's got a Naturalize won't help too much at this point, but maybe if you use an Infestation or Nourish to get some card draw, maybe he can overdraw some retrospect, and he's got another Tyrant as well. On top of that, he's got some pretty good options here.
I mean, Ben's really thinking hard about Spreading Plague because he knows Leeroy's kept some cards that he still has in his hand, and he can be pretty sure one of them would be Spreading Plague, given that he's already seen a Wild Growth and a Nourish already being played. What else would you be keeping as a Druid? So he's got to think, do I deal with Spreading Plague now? Or do I just try and go really narrow until I can get to that UI? And it looks like he's going for the narrow route. Oh, he's just going full face here, saying, you don't have a swipe. You don't have any ways of clearing this board. I'm going to leave this 4-3 on the board. I don't know about that.
Well, that Starfall and Stone is obviously going to say otherwise. And of course, the hero power on top of that. So, yeah, no, you're right there. And I always feel like with Tog Druid as well, as token, you have to, it's common sense. You have to get the job done quick. And I think Ben's trying to do that, but on top of that, trying to make him use his plagues as well. But he doesn't need to use a plague. He can trade, he can hero power, and use his spell stones anyway.
I mean, plague's not terrible here, to be honest. You could follow it up with branching paths the turn afterwards. You can even get a tyrant down now. The plague trades really well into these 3-1s. You only get 2, which is a bit of a shame, but you do get to get that tyrant out. Another option is just going for Starfall to kill these here. It looks like he's pretty set on the fatigue plan by drawing more cards here. This is really quite a lot worse tempo than some of his other things, and it's not like Ben's going to really be making a huge plague board anytime soon. It could be a case of you just put yourself on the back foot here for, saving a Spreading Plague for the future, which I'm not sure is like the greatest reason.
Yeah, even later on, even though he does have that Nourishing Infestation now, he could use the Nourish to get some crystals out now, because otherwise, if he uses Infestation, it's just going to basically be a waste.
Wild Growth. That means you get to play UI next turn. That's a pretty good turn for Ben, I'd say.
Yeah, he's probably not complaining. And I was going to say as well, if he does use his Infestation next turn, hopefully he'll get a tyrant of his own to stop himself from overdrawing and getting that played as well.
Yeah, and then it could be a situation where Leeroy has to plague a not so great board down the line, and he's just kind of lost all this sort of momentum earlier for no real benefit, I'd say.
Oh, I just noticed Leeroy's now on fire. Quite literally as well. Dark Leeroy. Dark Fire Leeroy.
I'm a little bit scared right now. I don't know about you.
I don't know. I'm a little bit. It's a bit worrying. Oh, no, he's back. He's not on fire anymore. It's now not Dark Leeroy. It's just normal Leeroy. And as I said, it's gone back. He can't make up his mind. He is on fire technically if he wins his next game, because he's making a run, isn't he? Pretty much to that extent. So do you think it'll be worth him now to use a UI now at this point? Because to be fair, he hasn't got anything much to play anyway, and he needs card draws in that respect. So maybe just UI to face and then hopefully get a tyrant on top of that to play something just to stop him from overdrawing and
overdrawing doesn't matter too much right now, especially against a deck which can swap decks with you, and then you lose a load of cards anyway. So I think the best tempo plays are usually what you want to be doing. UI is really good here. You have the Malfurion already in hand, so there's no worry about discarding that. It could be a case where he wants to maybe go for Malf now, but probably not. I think it's probably just a UI on the face this turn.
And at least it'll keep Leeroy at bay in that much respect as well. He's won't be able to arm up too much at this kind of stage until he has one of his own. There's not really too much Ben could have done yet. It's like you said before, he could Malfurion if he wanted to, but even there won't be too much use, and lucky for him, he does get a time. But then again, like you said before, he could be unlucky just due to the fact that he may want to burn some cards in case it gets to the fatigue game.
Yeah, Ben's not going to win the fatigue game.
Absolutely
sure.
not.
Unless he can draw through his deck faster than Leeroy can. But Leeroy's been very particular about using all his things for draw. He's used a Nourish for draw. He's used a Branching Path for draw. So he's saying, I want to get to fatigue before you do. So I'm going to win the fatigue race. Although he is using the Naturalize now, it looks like he might be just going straight up for a... I'm not sure exactly.
Well, if he does out-fatigue Leeroy, then I'll have to question as to how and why and tell me. In that respect. But it seems like now, if you look at Ben's hands, you can see he has got Whisper the Woods, so that one would be too bad of a play. But then again, Leeroy's got that swipe in hand, and he's still got 2 of those Starfalls as well. And those 2 plagues, just to...
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he has all of these options for big boards, but right now he's got a kind of middle-ish board, which he's not too sure what to do about. He's just going to play a tempo 4-4 here, which probably is not going to do a whole lot, to be honest. It's interesting, because like, if he used one of the Starfalls here, he could have basically killed this 4-4 and made a 4-4 of his own, at the cost of losing one of your AoEs. Leeroy's probably trying to completely beat every single board that Ben can do for the rest of the game. That's why he's choosing to save these Starfalls. I'm not sure if that's the best route.
Yeah, it's quite a difficult one. Leeroy can just literally just sit back and play the waiting game now. And it's the right decision entirely. He's got every answer that he needs. It's just a matter of making sure he's cost effective.
Yeah, Nalfurion's a really good play here. It's kind of making a middle-ish board while it's not costing you much resources and putting the most pressure on Leeroy's face so that he has to do stuff. So he's just thinking what he wants to do about this 4-4, or if he wants to buff up his board here with the Power of the Wild. I think buffing with Power of the Wild actually makes some sense here. It protects you a lot against things like Swipe.
Or maybe he's trying to protect himself, because if you use Power of the Wild next turn, and also have a draw as well, he does have lethal. That's, of course, if Ben has still his 3 minions on board, but it's looking pretty unlikely at that stage.
Yeah, I mean, the Power of the Wild has got a lot of benefits right now, because if Leeroy were to use just a swipe on this 4-4 and then trade his other 4-4 into the 1-4 taunt, then that's pretty good as just a play. So I'm not sure. I mean, the problem is if you want to save Power of the Wild for a really wide board, then you risk Leeroy just going Spreading Plague on you.
That's what Ben's kind of trying to bait out, but at the same time keep enough there so he does have lethal. He has the answers, but it's the fact that he just can't keep anything on this board so far.
So Ben is just basically trying to put up not enough of a board that warrants a plague, but not too little of a board that I start losing board control or Leeroy just gets out of range with the health. So it's kind of playing that sort of tiptoe sort of game plan and trying to whittle down Leeroy's health total before he starts doing all his big things.
Looking at that, I wouldn't even complain to using a plague now. At least he gets 3 on there just to keep him at bay, but even then, he's got to use it at some stage. But I think you can tell that Ben just wants to make the most of his Whisper of the Woods in the Solar Forest, but even then now, it's going to be a struggle.
So Leeroy is kind of faced with a board that's quite hard to deal with. A Plague does okay here. You can trade away your 4-3 into the 3-5 Plague and then maybe just hero power down the 3-5. And that deals with most of the board, but the worry is that Ben's going to buff it further. Kind of hard to buff the health of this board that much more. He has a Power of the Wild, that's about it. He has plenty of ways to buff the attack, make it more durable with Soul of the Forest. But Leeroy should be able to deal with that with the tools he has in hand. Just thinking about what he wants to do this turn. His health total is quite low, and he has used Branching Paths already for card draw. So it's going to be quite hard for him to find that much armor gain. So there's a worry that he could just sort of die to burst damage from BigBen. But I think a Plague probably has to come down this turn. He's choosing to Plague first.
I'm quite surprised he didn't trade the mid-hero power.
Yeah, this is like just a misplay. He just missed out on a 1-5 here.
Yeah, because I would have expected him to do that straight afterwards, so at least that way he's got 1 extra taunt, and even if Ben does trade off...
So...
okay.
Ben spots it, he's like, yeah, that wasn't quite the right sequencing there, Mr. Leeroy.
Yeah, I think he noticed that straight up anyway, but he knows that Leeroy's getting a little bit nervous now, just trying to keep himself at bay. But it's like you mentioned before, without the branching now, you want Wemmer to armor up in any way, and it's... I mean, not on his last legs, but he's got plenty of ways to at least get him out of a sticky situation. But even then, it's when it gets later on, if Ben managed to bait out something which Leeroy doesn't want in the wrong move, then that's when things could really tip over the edge for him.
I mean, we have to remember here, this is elimination match. whoever loses this series is going out, and if Leroy loses this actual game, he's out of the ESL Prem. So nerves could definitely be starting to play a factor here, and we can see that from Leroy's quite sloppy play on the last turn.
Yeah, of course, if he loses, it's on your bike. See you later, mate. So
yeah.
See you next time. But no, we know Leroy doesn't want that. They've both gone through some grudging matches of the last 2 weeks of trying to make it back into the top 8. But look at this, though. This is quite an interesting one. He might have played Whistle of Woods anyway. Does power everything up, and Ben's is literally just going all in here.
Yeah, I think he's saying, if you were to spreading plague this board, I can get through that plague, and then you've got nothing else. That would be the second plague. What else can you do defensively? I have branching paths, I've got Savage Roars, I've got swipes. I can get through a second plague very, very easily, and then just present either lethal immediately or a board that you can't deal with. So it could be a spot where BigBen's just got checkmate on Leroy. I mean, he could do something like double Starfall here, and it deals with the Wisp side of it. And that actually might be his best shot here. If he goes double Starfall here, it clears up most of the board. But I'm not sure if it's enough to actually survive because of the swipes in hand. If he had just one, if he just had Savage Roars, there's a way to play around that. If he had just swipes, there's a way to play around that. But because Ben has both, his next turn's really, really very versatile. And it's really hard for Leroy to actually get out of this and survive.
I think that double Starfall it's going to show that, well, don't get me wrong, it needs to be done, and I can't really see many other ways he can actually get out of this kind of scenario. But even afterwards, Leroy's he's gone from having plenty of options to run out of ideas now. I think Ben realises he hasn't really got too many more AoEs to deal with. He's only got one plague left to trade off with, and that's it. And he's got 2 Savage Roars and 2 swipes on top of that. So I mean, he double Savage Roar and swiped afterwards in some way.
Just swipes lethal here, because you can use the swipe on the 1-5 and then the swipe on the other 1-5, and that just clears them all up. And then the minions on board will be enough to win. So that's going to be BigBen qualifying for the finals.
And look how happy Ben is. He knows he's gone through a lot of pain and heartache, not having a fantastic start going 1 and 2, but finally, after things looking not too bad for Leroy, sadly for Leroy, I think even with that one tiny mistake of not trading the Hero Power and using the Plague, I'm not sure it would have made too much difference having an extra 1-5 on the board, because one way or another, those Savage Roars were there to back him up as well, and he would have had Hero Power to kind of make up for the lost damage from one of the other minions anyway. So, yeah, Ben takes that 3-1, considering we thought we were going to go to another game. That would have been my 5th game 5 in a row, I think, if that was... Yeah, I've had enough game 5s for 1 week, but, you know, we can still see another one this week anyway, considering the next match as well. But, of course, with Ben, as you can see, he does take that 3-1 and overall goes 3-2, which means he does qualify for EGX for the top 8. And sadly for Leroy, just misses out going 2 and 3. And sadly for him, would not be making it to EGX, which is a bit of a shame, because both these players are more than capable of making that top 8, even though you could say potentially even get that top 4 spot. So, you know, it's a great match, probably kind of what we expect in that kind of scenario of how close it was going to be. But Ben has been through a lot of game 5s, trying to get through here. And there were a lot of unfavourable matchups, but